Tired of feeling like you're spinning all the plates in your design business and at any moment they could all come crashing down? Are you feeling like you're so close to breaking through to the next level, but those consistent projects still aren't flowing your way? Are you ready to finally take your business from a hobby to 100K and beyond? Then welcome to the SixFigure Designer Podcast. I'm talking all the techniques you need in your design business to start paying yourself, get great clients, and finally break through that 5-figure ceiling. So, welcome everyone. I'm so glad you guys have joined us today for another episode. I'm going to be talking to one of my favorite students, Audra Sinatra. And her and I have been working together for several months now. And she just had some really great things going on in her business. So I wanted to bring her back on the show to kind of talk about where she's at in her business. So first of all, welcome, Audra. It's really great to have you here today.
Thank you.
And I wanted you to talk a little bit about, tell everybody a little bit about your business. I know that you have a really interesting background. So why don't you talk a little bit about, give everybody a little bit about your business and what you're doing and kind of where you came from.
Okay. Well, I came from a hedge fund background. I lived in Manhattan for 11 years and worked at a hedge fund. I was a VP. And so that was like a very different life. I moved back to Florida almost a decade ago. I was born and raised in Florida and started this design business just, think mainly based on a lifestyle change that I wanted when I started my family.
Right. Yeah. So when you say lifestyle change, were you looking to have this design business so that you could be more flexible in your hours and your working time and also juggle what's going on at home? What was the reason for you wanting to? I'm sure there's several reasons, right? Why you left that world and kind of did a whole nother 180 into the creative space and then whatever was going on at home too.
When I had my child, it was in COVID. And so I kind of had to leave everything behind and reinvent. And I kept her home for a long time. And so we were happy at home, bonding. And then when it came time to think about like what's next for me, I just didn't really have the desire to go back. Like you said, I really wanted a lot of flexibility. My husband's from India, so we like to travel. Our daughter has been to India twice. She's just turned 4. And so I think being global citizens is a part of our family values. And so in order to have that kind of flexibility, I think it was going to be down to me to make a shift. And when I thought about really when I started this, it was like, well, what will I do? Like what will it be? And then I just looked back and people had been telling me that I should do interior design all my life. And so it was kind of it's one of those things where you just try to like pick up a natural talent and run with it. And I didn't know if it would stick. I never really had any goal to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. I don't think that was really in my book for myself. Um, so that's yeah, it's a bit of a new thing completely.
It's a learning curve when you sort of follow a passion, like it sounds like you did, and then start to take on so many things that are maybe things that you're doing in your own business that you weren't doing as an employee working for somebody else, right? Like figuring out who your client is and figuring out how you find them and figuring out how you sell to them. So all of those things amongst a million other hats that we wear can be a challenge at times, and it's definitely a learning curve. So I wanted to ask you briefly, like, what made you go from hedge fund to such a creative field like interior design?
I've always had an interest in interior design. I think I moved to New York because I liked fashion and culture and all things creative. And when I was there, I actually transformed my little rental studio and I won an award for that. at apartment therapy and I went on stage and had to speak with a microphone in front of like 300 people, which made me like terribly nervous. But that was when I wasn't even thinking about doing design as a profession. That's just when I was having fun with it. And so I think when it came time to do something for myself, it was a question of like, well, if what's it going to be? And it's like, I think this is probably like more my heart and like more my, like I have found my groove with this so much. And I think that this is like way more right for me than any of that ever was. But it took starting it to figure that out.
Gotcha. And that's when so many others have done this as a second career. And in fact, I've run into so many designers who have their first career is in some kind of financial services industry or accounting. So I find that so fascinating that to go basically it's whatever it's like both you're using both sides of the brain now, right? Because you have that financial probably wherewithal and then this whole creative side to running a business and then being able to bring all those great skills from that first career to this is sort of like a powerhouse combination in terms of when you are becoming an entrepreneur. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's awesome. So how long have you actually had your business? How long have you been on your own?
Uh, just shy of 2.5 years.
Yeah, so you're really pretty new at it. And I think when you and I met, I'm going to say you might have been 18 months, maybe 2 years into your business.
Yeah.
So why don't you just tell us a little bit about how those first 2 years went, going from, you know, being in the hedge funds, being home from COVID, having a family, starting a family, and then deciding to go into this creative endeavor. What were those first couple years like? What kind of projects were you doing and how were you finding clients?
It was, very grassroots, and I think one thing that you talked about was my background, and so I had a lot of process and project management from the hedge fund. I had sat around the conference room table in a lot of big meetings. I'd been part of, like, big, like, international, initiatives for that firm, and I loved it, and then I came back to Florida and I actually did some sales jobs, like sales and fundraising, and so by the time I started this, I felt like I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt like finally all those skills that might have been, like, hard to gain at the time were coming together in a way that was, like, really helpful for me, and so I had a lot of gratitude around that, but I those first 2 years were also just, like I mean, I just started this on a whim. I was really scared to believe that it could be true and, like, that this could be my job, and so I just started taking, like when I was out with friends, I would just say that this is what I was doing now, and that's actually where a lot of my projects came from, like, just friends who wanted to update, and I did a lot of those projects in the first couple of years. Um, Actually, my first year was a lot of friends, and then by my second year, it was definitely, like, people that I didn't know were coming to me.
Right. Right. And one of the things I was going to bring up is that you were you're a lifelong learner. Like a lot of designers are, we all love to read and to look at see what everyone else is doing and kind of look at what's going on. And I think that you were no different and you were taking in a lot of information that you were seeing in a lot of groups and a lot of just taking in a lot of information about the design industry and how to run a business. And to your credit, you really took your business pretty far in a very short period of time. But I know one of the things that we talked about when we first met was, and we had done like a business audit together, was that you almost had too much information or input from other people. And somewhere along the way, you kind of lost a little bit of what made you so incredibly, I think, powerful and special. And we did talk about that because I remember looking at your website going, it sounds just like something that anyone could insert their name into, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about that and how do you think that that has changed a little bit now that we've, kind of pinpointed a little bit about what your strengths are. And really, you were very clear on who your potential client was, or client, perfect future client was. I was impressed with that. It just wasn't translating into some of the words that you were using in your marketing. So talk about that a little bit, about how you kind of knew in your heart who you wanted to go after, but for some reason it wasn't really translating into what you were putting out in your marketing and some of your posts.
Yeah, I don't know if people listening can hear this, but do you see how like Pam is so encouraging and like even her questions have so much cheerleading in them? Thank you for saying that it's a powerhouse combination. I think when I started this, I felt really unsure of how to grow, how to build it. While I felt like I all my skills had come to bear in this role, I felt like there was so much that I just did not know how to do. So much. And so marketing is definitely one of them. I get really overwhelmed at the idea of marketing. And I had gone to all the webinars, done all the things, listened to all the things, and was trying to frame, like, I was trying to use that, word like the fill in the blank to make your website copy.
Hmm.
And I think that audit was like one of the most, I spent like 2 hours with Pam and came away like knowing who I was going to serve and how I was going to talk about it. And I still think about it. I still think about it because it took me from, I think in the beginning, anybody is your client. Anybody is your client because you just need experience. You need to get your hands on projects. You need to understand the process. Like there's so much to learn. And I think you're just so eager to start. And then I think that, and so when people say niche is niche is rich, I guess, when they say that, I think, like, that always confused me because I'm like, well, I think, like, my niche is anybody. So I think it took me 2 years to kinda create that in my head. Like, really, it took time to bake. And I think Pam, like, pulled it out. Like, she pulled a string and she was just like, I think her outside perspective on what made me unique was so helpful. Like, I hadn't had anybody articulate it before. And Pam's been doing this for 30 years, so she knows her way around. And so when she said back to me my skills and what it would mean, like what it might mean for a client to work with me, like what they might get, it just like it clicked so hard. It became like very clear, and it took me it like took me down a funnel from not like from feeling like I want to work with anybody who wants to pay me to I want to work with this kind of person.
And I think too, to your point, did it also, because all I did was really pull out what you were really telling me. But I think that one other transformation that came from that for you was your excitement about where your business could go from here, because when, like you said, you saw the click, or when it clicked, you lit up too, because I think it just where you went, yes, this is totally what I want to be doing. And I think prior to that, you might have been just going through the motions, because you were trying to get that experience. But when you were ready for that next level and we were able to get that to kind of click and that light bulb moment to go off.
I
I'm
think
just smiling because I'm thinking about that time when you were just so excited about that, and it made me very happy. So,
you like lasered in. It was like I had been thinking about a lot of things, but it was very jumbled in my head. And I think probably like a lot of people, it's hard to know how to see yourself and interpret yourself outward to the world. And I think you just like lasered, you listened to everything I said and then you like gave it back. And I took tons of notes. You gave it back to me in a way that was like so crystal clear. And it just, I think your clarity and like the way you organized all of that information really like gave me a lot of excitement because I mean, that's like who we talked about is like the person that I want to be working with. So it was like, it was exciting to think about, okay, like now I'm targeting like the kind of person I'm actually going to enjoy working with.
right. And that made everything clear in terms of, because we had been talking about networking groups and some other ways that you could get out there. And now you're like looking, if a networking group say has 300 people, you're looking for the people that meet the criteria that you've already set forth in terms of who you want to be working with and why, right?
Yeah, I think it helps. Once you have that narrowed down, it really helps put that filter on
Yes.
your business, which is so helpful.
Yeah, so to lead off, to kind of continue with that, like how helpful was it for you to have someone that you could bounce ideas off of as you were working through sort of this new level of clarity in terms of who your customer were? How helpful was it for you to be able to bounce ideas off of somebody and not maybe just your spouse or
I
those
was
sorts of things?
I was laughing because I was thinking to myself like, well, I bounced my ideas off an entire host of people. Um, but when you were talking about me being a lifelong learner, I think that's right. I think you probably are too, but I'm an Enneagram 5, which means I'm just like a straight data collector. And I would mention these ideas to a lot of people, but I think there was a difference when I talked to you about it because you have been in the industry, you know what clients are looking for. Like you've interacted with so many clients and it's like the way that you digested it and analyzed it and put it back to me in such a clear way made me feel like it was like I knew it. I knew like immediately that like that was the thing. Even if like my husband had been telling me I should like I should mention that I worked at a hedge fund all along and like he laughed when I was
Oh,
like I figured it out and he's like that's so great, Audra.
you mean the thing I've been telling you for years? Well, that's spouses, come on now. We can listen to them sometimes, but other times it's better to get it from the outside perspective. I think that works in a host of things that happen on our
Sure.
lives. But yes, I think it was just because to everyone that's listening out there who's kind of, I call it, in the messy middle, and the messy middle lasts for a very long time and it comes and goes. It's hard to do all the things and to have clarity at the same time. Like it's a lot because you're also just doing, like you're just keeping your head above water, especially if you have a young family who's taking, that's a big focus in your time, and building a business and doing all these things. Like the space that we have to be able to, digest things and let them simmer, like you talked about, like let the soup simmer and stuff. We don't always have that. And that's why that outside perspective really helps, because I'm not in all of the things that are going on in your life. I'm just hearing what you're saying to me and kind of picking it out and highlighting what I'm seeing. So if anyone's kind of going, well, I'm in the middle of it and I can't figure it out, we hear you, both of us. We know we all have our levels of messy middles. So it definitely takes time. So one of the things that we did when we were working together is we talked about this shock and awe box. And we worked on kind of crafting your shock and awe box, and it's a marketing technique on how you can attract the right clients. And you were, of course, a star student and was able to really put this together relatively quickly. And tell me a little bit about, before we get into some of the great things that have happened since you've done that work. Tell me a little bit about some of the things that you discovered in putting together the documents in that shock and awe box, because I think putting together some of these documents also helps craft a lot of internal conversations, right? And boundaries and things that we would put in place in our business if we had our wishes every time, right?
Yeah, I think Pam's got a great roadmap. She maps out the whole shock and awe box. It gives you examples of what the pages should look like and what they should include. And as I went through that, I was like, oh gosh, like I have all this stuff. I mean, I have this information, but like in no way is it in one document. It's everywhere, or I haven't even drafted it yet. So it just felt like a really smart way to pull together like snapshots of things and get it into a nice box. And I think it's really elevated. It's elevated my business in a way that I think it shows that I'm a professional and that I run a business. And I think that if if a potential client gets like nothing more than that from that box, like I feel like I've already won like a lot. I want to have that presence of like I'm a professional. I'm gonna do a good job for you. This isn't a side hustle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of the exercises that are in there also help you craft some of your boundaries ahead of time, answer some questions that clients generally come up with. And it gives you, an opportunity. Designers tend to like freeze when asked a difficult question on the spot, but it allows you to think through some of the harder questions that you might have gotten in the past and don't know how to answer. It might actually give you time to think about how you want that to be answered, what you want to say if you could, right?
Yeah. And I've scripted out some it's helped me script out some like there are some questions that I get and I would always be a little uncomfortable answering them, but I think I've found a way to like work through those discomfort points with
Mhm.
clients.
Yeah, so get through the hard stuff, right? Because we do
Yeah.
get some of those things. So you have, like the star student that you are, put together several shock and awe boxes. You've been going to some networking events. And just tell us a little bit of the story. You said that you had sent out four of them. And what did you do? Like, how did that come about? How did you send your boxes out?
I I'm super compliant, so of course I've figured this out. I drafted the box like as soon as Pam gave it for homework. I sent them out. I played around a little bit with the timing. I sent a couple out before the discovery call. I sent a couple out after the discovery call, and I think and it's all been within the past like I think 2 months probably.
Gotcha.
And I was hesitant to I didn't know how this was going to work for me, so and I have a small office and I didn't want to buy a bunch of material and then decide that I was going to ditch the idea. So I actually went to a local gifting company and I asked them to put together a really thoughtful box for me and I love what they did, but so the first handful I asked her if she actually the first she sent out for me and then I said, "Hey, can you just like make 5 or 6 and I'll buy them." So now they're on my bookshelf and I can send them out myself. And I think that they have been really, like, well received. They
Mhm.
kinda set the tone and they help clients get a view into what this is gonna be like before we really spend time together face to face.
Yeah, and, one of the things that you said, which I thought was really interesting, is, like, you just mentioned it, that it sets you apart, right? I will say that it totally sets you apart because no one else is doing this, so this is shocking somebody into saying, "I better stop and listen because this person's doing something different," right? So I think that that elevates you in your business, and then you said, it's really changed the way you see yourself, the way you describe yourself, and how you can help someone, what your value proposition is. So, how do
I
you
think
think that the shock and awe box does that for you?
I think the shock and awe box did some of that, but I think working with you, there's also a lot of that came into play. I feel like I can articulate my value, which I don't know. That seems simple, but it's so huge. It's so huge. Like only now when I go on discovery calls can I say to people like even sit in consultations and say like this is what you're going to get. And if you want this like this is how this works. Like I can explain it in a way that there's a level of confidence behind it and I think people are looking for that. They want to make sure that you understand the value that you bring. And that was really hard for me to articulate for really until I met Pam. And now I feel like I've got it a little bit more down pat. I can walk in and I think and I can walk in and like be, like, I can appear in a very professional way. And I think that box is also a part of it because it sets the tone. It shows you what it's going to be like to work with me. Like, we haven't even started yet, and you already have like a packet, you've already got a little gift, you've already had something shipped to your house that's for you. And I think that that is a reflection of what this experience will look like. And I think it sets me apart from the people who might be hobbyists, which is great. Like if you're a hobbyist, like there's no harm in that. But when you're trying to support a business, like I want that to come across.
Right. And I think, so tell me, do you feel like this confidence that you've gained, even by putting the box together and going through that exercise of figuring out a bunch of the details that are in the box, do you feel like it's given you more confidence to approach bigger projects, better clients moving forward?
I think it has. I think when I met Pam, I was ready to help out of the smaller projects and really get into. I mean, I had done some full house, like full home, full scale projects, but I think that's the way that I really want to go. Like I want to lean into more full service. And so when I met Pam, it was kind of like, well, how do I really go about doing that? How can it was like I felt the transition. I felt that I wanted to scale up a little bit and be able to help people in a more like complete way. And I think working with Pam like helped me like figure out some of the really critical pieces to like scoot into like that more
That
extensive
level? Okay.
project.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still in the messy middle with it. Like
The
I
messy middle actually never ends, but that's okay. That's
okay, it's
a whole nother
super well.
podcast. Well, you go through levels and your business will hit a level and you'll be like, this is great. Now I want to go to another level. So then the next level has its next messy middle. So, and we're strivers, right? We're
Yeah.
learners, lifelong learners. We're always striving, trying to be better, but
Yeah, I
I
think I'm in that I think I'm in that I think I'm a little bit in that moment of like discomfort where I'm trying to like make the jump. I've put it out to the universe that like what I want, what I'm ready for. And I'm just and I've had like it's funny, like as soon as I finish your program and kind of put that out into the world, I've had like quite a few big projects come knocking. And some of them may take off here soon, but
so
it's
some
just
of the
like
biggest opportunities you've ever had the chance to work with, right?
completely, yeah, completely totally different. Totally different.
And I think all that builds on itself in terms of confidence. Like once you get that first six-figure job or whatever it is that's your next level, it it builds your confidence going, I know I can do this because now I've done it, right? And then
Yeah.
keeps building from there. So it's a really exciting time. And you haven't really sent that many, to be honest, sent that many boxes out to have such good response so far. I think it's only been maybe 4 boxes or something like that. And to have those kind of opportunities, a six-figure opportunity presented to you, is pretty incredible. And what a great tool moving forward.
I think I've had 3 six-figure projects, like, pass across my desk since I've started doing that.
3 out of 4, you sent out 4 boxes and 3 of them were six-figure opportunities?
Yeah, and then the other one was, like, a 50K opportunity. I sent the box. Um,
That's incredible.
yeah, I was like, "We're just
Look
going
at
for
you,
it."
you're like, "Yeah, 3 six-figure opportunities, whatever." It's so great because this is where you've already hit that next level, is you believe it, you feel it, like six-figure projects, no problem, right? Whereas when I first met you, I think that conversation would have been different.
For sure.
And that's only in a few short months. So that's incredible. That is just kudos to you for um, having faith in the process and sticking to, kind of putting these things together and then putting it in motion because I think this is just the beginning, to be honest with you,
Thank
because
you, Pam.
I can already tell that there's so many awesome things about you, even in our time working together, that we don't forget the little people someday, Audra.
I think That's really kind of you. I think I came to you at a point when I knew that I was ready. I felt it, like, I was like, "I'm ready to really transition and, to my next, tier or level," whatever you call it, and I think that it was just the perfect, like, working with you. I think your all of your years of experience really just made it so it was the perfect match for me. Like, I wanted to level up, I came to Pam, now I'm leveled up.
And you're only at, you know, the beginning. So it's super exciting. Well, Audra, thank you so much for being vulnerable and kind of talking with everyone and me about all the things that have gone on in your business and then, letting us share in your wins in terms of where you're at now and where you're going to go. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with everyone here. And hopefully, if you're listening, you've been super inspired by what Audra had to say. And um, just know that it's all a process. Building a business is a process, just like design's a process. And if you're interested in kind of looking into this whole shock and awe, I am actually doing an upcoming seminar and moving into a coaching program after that. So if it's something you'd be interested in, I would love for you guys to check it out. You can sign up for the wait list, which is in the show notes. But Audra, thank you so much for being here. So appreciate it and kind of inspired by your story. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you, Pam.